Today's sponsor is this 2009 Honda Civic. That's right, this specific Honda Civic. The first, last, and only word in luxury. The Civic comes fully equipped with tires, wheels, battle damage, and even a rear window, so that you can see what is behind you. As you enjoy your Detroit City driving tour, luxuriate in the cushy, cozy, high-end comfort that only a 2009 Honda Civic can provide. Welcome to Detroit, Motown, the Motor City. We're so pleased that you decided to join us for a Detroit City driving tour today. Detroit is not a traditional sightseeing destination, and many people envision it only as a series of reductive stereotypes that fail to capture the city's true complexity. Today, you will see urban blight, yes, but you will also see artistry, multiculturalism, and resilience. Circumstances have been unkind to the city, but I think it will be readily apparent that the city has not given up, and indeed that it is in the midst of a renaissance. As this is one of our special Tranquility Tours, I will be speaking in a soft voice and observing many moments of silence to give you a chance to relax, take in the scenery, and even rest your eyes if you are so inclined. If there is anything we can do to make this tour a more peaceful experience, please do not hesitate to let us know. Here you see what is now called the TCF Center, but which many locals still call Cobo Hall. This is where the International Auto Show is held every year, and it is connected via elevated railway to the General Motors Renaissance Center, which you will soon see on your right.
TCF Center.
The Renaissance Center is a group of 7 interconnected skyscrapers and has been the tallest building in Michigan since 1977. It houses not only GM facilities but also a variety of businesses and international embassies. In all, the Renaissance Center has 1,246 individual rooms and a famously convoluted layout. There are rumors that the complex was made intentionally difficult to navigate so that outsiders wouldn't stumble across secret GM vehicle development meetings. For my part, I think it's just bad design. Still, it cuts quite a striking silhouette. Wouldn't you agree? Next, we are heading to the Basilica of St. Anne de Detroit. There are many, many churches in the city. In fact, there are more churches per capita here than anywhere else in the United States. But St. Anne is certainly the oldest, having been founded more than 300 years ago by French colonists. Yes, that's right. Detroit was a French city. Those unfamiliar with the region tend to imagine the upper Midwest was first settled by British or perhaps German farmers, if they imagine it at all. But Detroit was in fact founded by Antoine de la Motte Cadillac, an explorer and adventurer of French heritage. A century later, Detroit became a major industrial and commercial hub in the Great Lakes region, and by 1920 it was the fourth largest city in the United States, surpassed only by New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia. Anyway, St. Anne de Detroit was originally a French Catholic congregation, but due to mass immigration, the congregation was predominantly Irish by the 1920s and has been predominantly Hispanic since the 1930s. The current cathedral building, constructed in 1886, is a fine example of the Gothic Revival style. Speaking of Detroit's Hispanic population, we are now on our way to Mexican Town. Mexican immigrants began settling in this area in the 1920s and have continued ever since. Immigration from Mexico saw a particularly dramatic spike in the 1990s, with seasonal immigration causing increases of up to 2,000 people at a time. This as the overall population of Detroit was plummeting. With this in mind, it is clear that the Mexican population is a critical part of Detroit's future. One thing Mexican Town really has going for it is the restaurants. It is believed there are more restaurants here than anywhere else in Detroit. Next, we will be heading to a truly fascinating area called Del Rey. Though Del Rey was once an independent village, it is now a neighborhood of Detroit, and sadly, a swiftly dying one. In 2007, the Detroit Metro Times called Del Rey the closest thing to a ghost town within a city. Oh dear. This is the way to Del Rey, but this train does not appear to be moving. Let's see if we can get around it. After a brief detour and a truly frightening ride over some abandoned and ruined train tracks, we are on our way to Del Rey. You'll notice it's quite empty out here. Del Rey is isolated from the rest of Detroit by Interstate 75, as well as miles of industrial land. Before too long, you will see a deeply sinister-looking industrial complex over on your left, and this is called Zug Island. Once a marsh-filled peninsula, Zug Island served as an uninhabited Indian burial ground for years, and I swear I'm not making that up. In 1876, there came a man called Samuel Zug, and Samuel Zug was not a bad person. He was a staunch abolitionist, for instance. But he was terribly rich, and he decided a literal Indian burial ground would be a great place to build a fancy home for his family. So he purchased the land from Del Rey and started building. Samuel and his family only lasted 10 years at Zug Island before the dampness drove them off, which is what happens when you insist on building atop a marsh. However, in 1891, Samuel sold Zug Island to industries that wanted to use it as a waste dumping ground. In 1901, Zug Island became the site of a steelworks operation, and that's been its primary use ever since. This means that the nearby air quality is quite atrocious. 6 of the 10 worst areas for air quality in Michigan are adjacent to Zug Island. We have now arrived in Del Rey, and you can see how abandoned it feels. Del Rey was first platted, as they say, in 1836, and it became a village in 1897. Salt mining and other industries attracted many settlers from Eastern Europe, including Slovaks, Hungarians, and Poles. In 1930, Del Rey had 23,000 residents. In 2010, it had only 2,783. If I had to guess, I'd say it has many fewer than that now. The reason being the Gordie Howe Bridge to Canada that's in the process of being planned and constructed. My understanding is that residents of Del Rey were not and are not in favor of the bridge, as it requires the destruction of many buildings and roadways and the forced relocation of residents. Many of the homes you see have been abandoned by people who were relocated. Those that aren't vacant are often owned by people who flat out refuse to move. The bridge builders have been working hard to get them evicted, though, unfortunately. As I said, Delray is a fascinating part of Detroit, and sadly, one that may not be around much longer. We will now head toward another victim of changing financial tides, the Detroit Central Train Depot. This place has become a very popular destination for urban explorers and kids up to no good, so security is pretty tight right now. That said, we should be able to get up fairly close to it. At the time of its construction in 1914, the Central Train Depot was the tallest train station in the world. It is comprised of not only the depot itself, but also a 13-story office tower and 2 mezzanine levels. It is 230 feet tall from base to roof. The depot was designed in the Beaux Arts style by architects who had previously worked on Grand Central Station in New York City. In 2018, the Ford Motor Company bought the depot and announced plans to restore it, and it is indeed in much better repair than previously. Whether Ford will be able to make good use of it remains to be seen. Now we'll pop over to Corktown, a very up-and-coming area. Aesthetically, it might look a bit run down, but actually, this is the land of the hipsters. I suppose this is as good a time as any to explain that Detroit has actually done a rather good job of attracting young people to come live here. Theoretically, this is meant to revitalize the town. But anecdotally, a lot of youngsters who live here are kind of just trust fund kids. Not a super dependable or principled demographic. Plus, they tend to make businesses that are great for them, but not overly useful to the city's long-term residents and urban poor. But anyway, as I said, Corktown is very trendy right now. I used to come here for Corktown Cinema, an indie movie theater that would do things like project movies on the side of a building outside while all the viewers would sit on lawn chairs and drink beer in the parking lot. That's the sort of event that makes Detroit really fun. By the way, Corktown is Detroit's oldest neighborhood, settled by Irish immigrants during the potato famine of the 1840s. Many of these immigrants were from County Cork in Ireland, hence Corktown. Now, nearby is the Masonic Temple, and it's definitely worth a look as well. It is the largest Masonic temple in the world. It was created as a venue for concerts and Broadway plays, and as a result has one of the largest stages in the country, 55 feet by 100 feet. It also has a swimming pool, a handball court, a gymnasium, a bowling alley, and a pool hall. It also includes quite a large hotel, but the rooms are currently in such disrepair that they cannot be used. Though apparently they will let you stay here if you are a noble of the Mystic Shrine or Blue Lodge Mason. I don't know what that means, but evidently it's important enough to gain you access to a dilapidated hotel room. Now we are in a neighborhood called the Gas Corridor, which is probably the most bustling part of Detroit. You see, we have the Fox Theater, 6th most popular theater in the country in 2019, apparently. With over 5,000 seats, the Fox is the largest surviving movie palace of the 1920s. We also had Little Caesars World Headquarters back there, quite impressive. And off to the left is Comerica Park, which I think we'll go see a little closer up. This is the home of the Detroit Tigers. Comerica Park replaced the older Tiger Stadium in 2000. I went to one of the last games at the old stadium, and my dad stole one of the armrests because I guess he thought it would be worth something. It really isn't, though. Comerica Park has a capacity of around 41,000, and yet its largest ever attendance was over 45,000 people. I don't know how that worked, and I'm not sure I want to find out. Next, we're heading to possibly the most important institution in all of Detroit, the Detroit Institute of Arts. Believe it or not, the DIA has one of the largest and most significant art collections in the world. So valuable, in fact, that they were encouraged to sell it when the city went bankrupt earlier in the 2000s. That was an absolute non-starter, though. People would not have it. This, despite the fact that, according to 2014 estimates, the DIA's collection could earn the city $8.1 billion. The DIA has an extensive collection spanning the globe from ancient Egypt to European works to contemporary art. It has over 100 galleries and covers a total of 658,000 square feet. With over 65,000 artworks, the DIA is visited by 677,500 visitors annually, making it one of the most visited art museums in the world. The fact that the city wouldn't let this treasure trove go speaks a lot to how much the people of Detroit value culture and the arts. Next, we'll head to the Heidelberg Project. This is quite a way out, and yet still within Detroit city limits because, again, Detroit is massive. The neighborhood that hosts the Heidelberg Project is technically called the McDougal-Hunt neighborhood, and it is just north of Detroit's historically African-American Black Bottom neighborhood. Black Bottom is another very sad story for another time. The Heidelberg Project began in 1967 when Tyree Keaton, who grew up in Heidelberg Street, returned from the Vietnam War to find his neighborhood desolate. In part, this was due to the 1967 race riots, which caused many of Keaton's former neighbors to abandon their homes and flee to other areas of the city. Keaton states that when he came back from the war, his neighborhood looked like a bomb had gone off. In 1986, Keaton hit upon the idea of transforming the abandoned neighborhood into an art project. At first, he painted empty houses with brightly colored dots and attached found objects to them. The project soon expanded to include many outdoor installations, encouraging people to walk through and admire the neighborhood rather than be afraid of it. There have unfortunately been several incidents of arson and demolition of certain installations by the city government over the years, but the project is still going strong and remains a popular sightseeing and photography spot, even more than 30 years after its creation. Let's see how the other half lives. We're going to stop by Indian Village, a historic and very affluent neighborhood not far from Heidelberg Street. Founded in 1894, this neighborhood contains luxurious examples of the Colonial Revival, Tudor Revival, Renaissance Revival, Spanish Mission Revival, Federal, and Georgian Revival architectural styles. A lot of homes are very large, with some over 12,000 square feet. Many have a carriage house, with some of those being larger than an average suburban home. The homes of Indian Village were largely designed by prominent architects like Albert Kahn, and the neighborhood has been home to such famous Detroit residents as Edsel Ford, the son of Henry Ford. You'll see a lot of signs here reading, "We love Indian Village." I'm sure it's pretty easy to love your neighborhood when you're living this well. Let's bid farewell to Detroit's aristocracy and head to one more historic ethnic neighborhood, Greektown. You may not be aware of this, but Greek immigrants have had a huge impact on the history of Detroit and on the state of Michigan in general. No matter where you go in Michigan, you will find what we call Coney Island restaurants, fast and cheap Greek eateries that are a step above fast food, but still cheaper than most sit-down restaurants. When I lived outside of Michigan for the first time in Boston, I was distressed and baffled that they didn't have Coney Island restaurants. Where do people in Boston eat when they want something better than fast food but still cheap? Anyway, if you're looking for slightly higher class Greek fare, Greektown is your place. Monroe Street is lined with Greek restaurants on both sides and festive lighting all year round. It's also within drunken, stumbling distance of the casino and, for the slightly more ambitious, the baseball stadium. This is how Greektown restaurants continue to thrive into the 21st century. This concludes today's Detroit City driving tour. I hope you found it relaxing and informative, and I certainly hope it has given you a more nuanced perspective on Detroit. If you would like to stretch out in the back seat as I drive you back to the pickup point, I highly encourage you to do so. I will remain quiet to allow you to recover from your busy day of sightseeing. Thank you for your patronage, and have a nice rest.